When we think of Russia's economy, the first word that pops into our heads is often oligarch. While this is a stereotype, the owners of, or managers of state-owned, major companies in Russia do play an outsized role in the economy. The term, though, masks the fact that Russia has had two sets of oligarchs over the past 30 years. The oligarchs of the 1990s were largely removed from power and replaced with a new set of economic elites. Scholar Dan Treisman has labeled these new elites Silovarchs, oligarchs with deep connections to Russia's security services, or Siloviki. This video outlines the shift in economic power in Russia. Privatization left Russia's biggest companies in the hands of a few sudden billionaires. Boris Berezovsky, one of the richest, claimed in 1996 that 7 bankers controlled 50% of the Russian economy. While that was an exaggeration, the oligarchs did wield outsized influence in the economy and in politics. The 3 best-known oligarchs were Boris Berezovsky, who owned Russia's main TV station, Vladimir Guzinsky, another media tycoon, and Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who owned oil company Yukos. All 3 were deeply embedded in Yeltsin's political and economic networks, funding his election campaigns and sometimes holding official positions. Berezovsky, for example, was a deputy director in Yeltsin's NSC. They epitomized a fast and loose style of politics and a winner-take-all approach to economics. Putin reined in the oligarchs upon taking power in 2000. He essentially offered them a new deal. If they stayed out of politics and cooperated in implementing Putin's new economic policies, they could retain their economic assets. A few oligarchs did this. Mikhail Friedman, the owner of Alpha Group, which is a banking and investment company with assets in telecommunications, banking, retail, and oil. He built his economic empire under Yeltsin, but then shifted his support to Putin. Similarly, Vladimir Potanin, the owner of a wide range of mining interests, most notably in nickel, sold a few key assets back to the state, but retained the rest of them. But the most prominent of the oligarchs were arrested on corruption-related charges and stripped of their assets. Berezovsky and Guzinsky had used their media assets to criticize Putin, and both fled the country to avoid charges. Khodorkovsky was arrested in 2003, which allowed the state to take over control of Yukos, and he was jailed until 2013. A new business elite has now replaced the departing oligarchs. These billionaires differ from their predecessors in 3 key ways: their networks, their political views, and the type of companies that they lead. First, while the background of the original oligarchs was varied, the new group of executives mostly come from the network of security service veterans who form the backbone of President Putin's administration. Second, while the oligarchs generally favored a weak but open political system in which they could buy access and power, the Silovarchs favored Putin's vision of a strong hierarchical state. Finally, while the oligarchs' corporate assets were largely independent of the state, the Silovarchs lead state-owned or affiliated companies. I offer 2 examples. Viktor Ivanov had a 20-year career in the Soviet KGB and Russian FSB, ending as its deputy director. He worked as an aide to Putin in both St. Petersburg and Moscow, and was the head of Russia's Narcotics Enforcement Agency from 2008 to 2016. Simultaneously, he chaired and currently chairs the boards of Almaz-Antey, which is a conglomerate of more than 40 defense companies, and Aeroflot, the national airline. Similarly, Sergei Chemezov, the general director of Russia's arms exporting monopoly, is a retired lieutenant general with extensive personal ties to Putin. Putin's takedown of the oligarchs was popular. They were a highly visible symbol of the chaos and economic decline of the 1990s. A 2000 poll, in fact, found that only 5% of the general public viewed the Yeltsin era favorably. This is compared to 34% who preferred the 2000s and 47% who were nostalgic for Soviet times. While the charges against Berezovsky, Guzinsky, and Khodorkovsky were definitely politically motivated, they were also valid. The economic system that replaced the freewheeling capitalism of the 1990s is one of state-based capitalism. It's largely rooted in exploiting Russia's natural resources. It has not produced a more equal distribution of wealth in the country, but it has produced relatively stable growth and an opportunity for the middle class to emerge in Russia. So when Russians look back on which model they prefer, greater freedom and economic decline in the 1990s, or less freedom and economic stability in the years since, some of them may prefer the present.